take American healthcare, in many ways, it's the best in the whole world. We have more brains in our medical schools and our pharmaceutical companies than the rest of the world has per capita. In fact, we may have as much brains as all the rest of the world together. On the other hand, if you actually went into American medicine, hospitals, doctors' offices, and so forth, you would find a huge amount of totally counterproductive, unnecessary activity that costs a lot and does no good or actually does harm. And you'd find that some people are not doing that. Well, they don't have the incentives to make money by doing it. You don't get a lot of counterproductive medical care. Kaiser here in California does not do a lot of unnecessary, stupid medical care or prolonged death to make more money and do all the evil things that other people do. Other people, as the hospitals and doctors get under pressure, introduce a lot of waste and folly. And some of the pharmaceutical companies' behavior is totally outrageous. Have some basic diabetes drug and trying to charge someone $10,000 a month or something. It's ridiculous. And I even go further. I think it's evil. And I think that the system should be changed. And I think it will be changed. I think there's too much wretched excess in the medical system. And the really sad part of it is the people who are doing it have no conscious malevolence. They're not people who decided to do murders and maimings to make money. They think it's good for the patients, what they're doing. And of course, you do an unnecessary back operation on somebody, it's a major evil. But the guy that's doing it really thinks it's good for the patient. In other words, he's turned his brain into cabbage. And that's not a good thing. I think you have to change the incentives. I think there are places in America that are very admirable that don't do a lot of unnecessary stuff, and other places that do. And I think we're going to have to change the system. I think it's if you take the medical system of Singapore, it costs 20% of what ours costs. It has better statistics. It's not opaque, it's open. We have a whole industry that tries to make the payment things opaque so they can take advantage of people. And they think it's free enterprise. I think it's stealing. Well, of course, China's spending a tiny percentage of GDP on health care, and we're spending a high percentage. In an aging, affluent civilization where GDP rises at 2 or 3% per year per capita, I don't think it matters at all if we spend 20% of GDP on health care. I don't think it matters that much if 20% of the health care is no damn good that we're buying. You know, like Botox for women for whom intervention is hopeless. and so healthcare is a whole different can of worms, but I don't think it's our main problem at all. And I think it is quite natural in our particular civilization to have a fair amount spent on healthcare. If you live to be as old as I am, I'm surrounded by people where their joints hurt so much the pain is unendurable. They're like the Tin Woodman. One hip, one knee, one knee. You know, I got a big infection, 30 days in the hospital. This is expensive. But if that's the way the civilization wants to spend the money, I don't consider it a crazy choice. And so I am not, we do have a crazy system for healthcare, and there are perverse incentives. There's many a hospital in this country where the doctors are fishing the people out of nursing homes and bringing them into the hospital so they can walk by the bed and bill the government $45 a day. And if they've got 10 patients in the hospital, that's $450. And the fact that they're using up resources which could be improved by the services aren't being able to get. In my hospital, I have a little list and so does the hospital. And those jerks are on their way out, and they should be. And so there's a lot of abuse in healthcare, and one of the ways you fix it is so the people who have the power, they exercise it to prevent the abuse. A lot of places you have get live in a hospital. Just nobody really wants to criticize anybody. That's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. In our leading academic hospitals, I'm sure this isn't happening in Michigan, but I have a friend whose daughter is head of infectious diseases in some medical school hospital, great hospital. And of course, the doctors there are fishing the people out of the nursing homes and bringing them in so they can walk by the beds and bill. And they're bringing in these terrible infections. And that takes a lot of treatment and a lot of walks by the bed and so on and so on. And of course, the parents of this particular doctor recognize that she's sort of risking her life going through medical school because of the abuse of the system by some of the doctors in a hospital where nobody is stopping the abuse. You know, it's like Burke said, for evil to triumph in the world, all that is necessary is that good men do nothing. But all over America, some people are intervening to stop some of these abuses. And you have to identify them, you have to rationalize, and you have to be willing to take the ill will. I have a friend, this is another wonderful story on human nature, chief of the medical staff, Southern California Hospital, and a bunch of non-board certified anesthesiologists who came out of, I forget the sub-branch of medicine, but it's not chiropractic, but anyway, they got in control of the anesthesia department of the hospital. And he could see that they had created 3 totally unnecessary deaths and covered up every single one. And he knew he was just going to ruin his life. So he got rid of them all. He changed the whole system. He ruined families. He ruined incomes. He cleaned house. And he told me the story 20 years later, and I said, what happened? And he said, to this day, none of the people I cleaned out and none of their friends has ever spoken to me. He was willing to take all that ill will to do the Lord's work and do it right. And you can say, why did he wait for the 3rd death? Well, maybe he thought he needed that much horror to accomplish the fix. But all over America, there are stories like that. That's a good story about human nature. That's a story about wisdom and virtue triumphing. And of course, they don't always win. Even in a bullfight, the bull sometimes wins.